Eleanor Whitmore had been married to Charles Whitmore for 37 years. She was 66. He was 71. They lived in a large white house on the edge of Charleston, South Carolina, the kind of house that looked like it had never known a hard day. The gardens were famous in the neighborhood, especially the long bed of white lilies that ran along the east wall. Eleanor had planted them herself in the second year of their marriage, when she still believed quiet love could take root in cold ground. Charles never looked at the lilies. He looked at balance sheets, at board meetings, at the young women who worked late in his downtown office. He looked at Eleanor the way a man looks at a piece of furniture that has always been there, useful, silent, and expected to stay. On the night of the accident, rain fell hard over the low country. Eleanor was driving home from a foundation meeting she had attended in Charles's place. He had been too busy. A black SUV came through the intersection too fast. Metal screamed, glass shattered. Eleanor's head struck the window. When the paramedics pulled her out, she was conscious but bleeding. They took her to the same hospital where she had once sat through Charles's father's final days. The nurse on duty was young and nervous. She called the number listed as emergency contact. Charles answered on the third ring. His voice was flat, the way it always was when something interrupted his evening. "Mr. Whitmore, your wife has been in a car accident. She's conscious, but we need..." In the background, a softer female voice murmured something. Eleanor would later learn it was Brooke Langford, his executive assistant of 4 years. The woman who already used the private elevator, who already signed for deliveries under the company account, who already told junior staff she would be the next Mrs. Whitmore, once the old one finally got the message. Charles's reply came clear and cold through the phone. "If she wants money, have her lawyer call me. Otherwise, call me when she dies. At least then the paperwork will be clean." The nurse froze. Eleanor, lying on the gurney with a cut above her temple and a sprained wrist, heard every word through the open speaker the nurse had forgotten to mute. Something inside her, something that had been cracking for years, finally broke clean through. She did not cry. She simply closed her eyes and waited for the doctors to finish. 3 days later, she was discharged. Charles never came to the hospital. Brooke sent a large arrangement of red roses with a typed card that said, "Thinking of you. The office." Eleanor left the flowers in the trash chute on her way out. She went home only long enough to pack 2 suitcases and 1 wooden box. Clara, the housekeeper who had worked for them for 22 years, stood in the doorway of the master bedroom with her hands twisted together. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you really leaving?" Eleanor gave her a small, tired smile. "Yes, Clara. Thank you for everything." She walked downstairs with the suitcases. At the front door, she stopped and turned. "One last thing. Please have someone dig up the lilies along the east wall, all of them. I want the bulbs." Clara's eyes widened. "But you planted those with your own hands." "They remind him of me," Eleanor said quietly. "It's time he stopped having to remember." That night she slept in a small, furnished apartment across the river, the kind of place that smelled of new paint and someone else's life. She slept badly. On the second night, she slept worse. By the third night, she stopped waking up expecting the high ceiling of the Charleston house. The divorce papers were ready within a week. Charles's lawyer, a polished man named Martin Hale, looked almost embarrassed when he handed her the thick folder. "Mr. Whitmore is prepared to be generous," he said carefully. "The house, a substantial cash settlement, continued health coverage, even a percentage of the company's shares transferred during the marriage." Eleanor opened the folder, took out a single sheet and signed her name in clean blue ink. "I'm taking nothing," she said. "Not the house, not the money, not the shares, not even the furniture I chose. I want the divorce final by the end of the month." Martin stared. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is highly unusual." "I know." She closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. "Please tell Charles I wish him well with his paperwork." When Charles received the signed documents, he laughed at first. A short, incredulous sound. "She's playing a game," he told Brooke. "She wants me to chase her." Brooke smiled the way women smile when they think they have already won. "Of course she does. Women like that always do." The days passed and Eleanor did not call. She did not send messages through mutual friends. She did not appear at the club or the foundation events. She simply vanished into a quieter life. Charles began to notice the silence the way a man notices a missing tooth with his tongue, constantly, irritably, unable to leave it alone. The mansion felt larger. The dining table looked ridiculous with only one place setting. No one reminded him that coffee on an empty stomach would burn a hole in him by noon. No one laid out his cufflinks. No one asked, in that soft way Eleanor had, whether he had eaten anything that wasn't from a boardroom tray. And every morning when he walked past the east wall, the dark rectangle of empty soil stared back at him. Clara had done exactly as asked. The lilies were gone. Only bare earth remained. One evening, nearly 3 weeks after the divorce was final, Martin Hale requested a private meeting after hours. He placed a sealed envelope and a small USB drive on Charles's desk. "Your father left instructions," Martin said. This was to be opened only if the divorce became final. Charles stared at his father's handwriting. For a long moment he did not touch it. Then he opened the video. The old man appeared on the screen, thinner than Charles remembered, but the eyes were still sharp enough to cut glass. "Charles," the recorded voice said, "if you are watching this, then you were arrogant enough to lose her." Charles's face went still. "You believed I arranged that marriage because she needed the Whitmore name. Foolish boy. She saved the Harbor Point acquisition before you even knew it was bleeding. She caught the contract language your entire board missed. She warned me about the coastal logistics deal and I ignored her once. That mistake cost us $14 million. The next time I listened. She earned those shares long before she ever wore your ring." The old man leaned closer to the camera. "She stayed because I asked her to watch your back until you learned the difference between love and possession. I died before I finished teaching you. If one day she leaves you with every dollar and takes only herself, do not celebrate. That is the day you learn what real poverty feels like." The screen went dark. Charles sat in the silent office for a long time. Then he played the video again. And again, meanwhile, Eleanor had begun consulting for a quiet investment group run by a man named Nathaniel Vale. He was 68 precise, and the kind of man who read documents before he looked at faces. He never asked about Charles. He never offered pity. He simply handed her files and waited for her assessment. "Analysis of the Eastern supply exposure is still correct," he said one afternoon. "Whitmore Group is overextended again." Eleanor closed the folder. "Some men only learn by stepping into the same hole twice." Nathaniel's mouth curved slightly. "Would you consult for us on a longer basis?" "That depends," she answered. "Do you listen before the loss or after?" "Before." "Then yes." Was not romance. Her heart was still too raw for that. But it was the first time in decades someone had asked what she wanted to build instead of what she was willing to endure. Back in Charleston, Brooke moved quickly. She placed fresh red roses in Charles's office. She used the private elevator without apology. She sat in the seat that had once been reserved for Eleanor at small executive dinners. She told people at the club that Charles was finally free. She charged a diamond bracelet to the company card and called it a vendor gift. She even asked Clara with a bright false smile whether the staff preferred something less depressing now that the previous lady of the house was gone. Clara reported every word to Eleanor in a quiet phone call. Her voice was calm in the way that meant she was furious. Charles noticed the changes slowly. At first, Brooke's attention flattered him. Then it began to irritate. Her perfume lingered too long. Her questions arrived before his answers. Her ambition stepped on every quiet space Eleanor had once protected without ever asking for credit. On the 32nd day, Alan Barker, Charles's longtime assistant, walked into Martin Hale's office with a thick folder. "I served Mr. Whitmore for 19 years, Alan said. "I did not sign up to help Miss Langford audition for a wedding ring with company funds." Folder contained everything. Calendar edits showing Brooke had removed the original hospital follow-up reminder. Messages where she told Charles that Eleanor was demanding more money. Deleted notes from Clara. Company card charges. and screenshots of anonymous posts claiming Eleanor had hidden assets and was working with competitors for revenge. Charles received a copy the same afternoon. Brooke denied everything. Then she began to dig harder. She leaked more stories. She tried to create the shape of a desperate ex-wife who would do anything for a settlement. Eleanor did not respond in public. She simply kept records. The Charleston Harbor Foundation Gala arrived on a humid Thursday evening in late September. Charles expected to announce a new strategic partnership and polish his post-divorce image. Brooke expected to stand beside him in a pale gold dress and the diamond bracelet she still had not repaid. Eleanor arrived late, on purpose. She walked in on Nathaniel Vale's arm with Martin Hales slightly behind them. The room shifted the way rooms shift when something unexpected and expensive enters. Cameras turned. Board members straightened. Brooke's smile died first. Charles's face went carefully blank. Eleanor walked to the center of the ballroom. "Worry, Charles," she said clearly enough for the nearest microphones to catch. "I didn't come to take your money. I came to show everyone why I never needed it." She turned to the gathered board members, investors, and old family friends. "Some of you know I finalized my divorce from Charles Whitmore recently. I accepted no settlement, no property, no compensation, and I relinquished every share I held in Whitmore Group." Whispers rose. "I did that because my worth was never attached to what Charles allowed me to keep." Martin stepped forward and handed a drive to the technical staff. The large screen at the end of the ballroom flickered to life. Charles's father's face appeared. The old man's voice filled the room. The entire message played. Eleanor's role in the Harbor Point acquisition. The contracts she had saved. The loyalty Charles had mistaken for greed. The final line landed like a stone in still water. Wealth is useful for many things. It buys buildings, companies, silence, and applause. It cannot buy back the person who once loved you before she learned what you were willing to believe about her. The screen went dark. Charles looked as though something inside him had finally understood gravity. Eleanor continued, voice steady. "You spent years guarding your wallet from the only woman in this city who was actually guarding your empire." Brooke stepped forward, voice sharp. "This is a performance. She's working with Vale Capital to damage Charles and steal the partnership." Eleanor looked at her with something close to pity. "Thank you for reminding me." The screen changed again. Messages appeared in clear text. "Future Mrs. Whitmore looks better in gold. Make sure any hospital follow-ups disappear from his calendar. If she waits long enough, she'll look desperate. Tell staff not to forward Clara's notes. He doesn't need more of her wounded wife act." Then company card statements. Jewelry, hotel dinners, flowers for Charles's office. Then the anonymous social posts linked to Brooke's device claiming Eleanor had hidden assets and was seeking revenge. Alan Barker stepped into the light holding a signed statement. "I confirm that Miss Langford altered calendar reminders, misrepresented Mrs. Whitmore's financial position, and instructed staff to withhold messages. I served Mr. Whitmore. I did not sign up to help Miss Langford audition for a wedding ring with company funds." Brooke's face drained of color. She lunged. Eleanor caught her wrist cleanly, turned it just enough to stop the motion, and guided her backward into the waiting hands of security. "Careful," Eleanor said softly. "Secretary is a job title, not a suicide mission." Ballroom erupted. Then Martin played the hospital recording. The nurse's voice came first, professional and strained. "Mr. Whitmore, your wife has been in a car accident." Charles's answer filled the hall, cold and unmistakable. "If she wants money, have her lawyer call me. Otherwise, call me when she dies. At least then the paperwork will be clean." Silence that followed was total, not one camera flash, not one whisper. Even scandal needed a second to digest cruelty that clean. Charles went white. His eyes found Eleanor. Across the room, she watched him remember everything and nothing at once. He whispered her name. She did not soften. "One life," she said, just loud enough for him to hear. "That sentence would have killed me. In this one, it only killed whatever was left of you." The board chair rose before the evening could rot further. An emergency session was called regarding Charles's leadership and the pending partnership. Nathaniel Vale stepped forward and stated calmly that Vale Capital would not proceed under Charles Whitmore's direct control. They would continue only through an independent committee and Mrs. Whitmore's consulting structure. Money, as always, listened faster than men. After the gala, Charles found her near the private exit. Rain tapped against the glass doors. For 1 second the sound pulled the memory of the accident close. Then Nathaniel stepped slightly aside but did not leave. Respectful distance, a choice offered rather than claimed. Charles's eyes were red. "I didn't know. You didn't ask," Brooke lied. "You believed her because her lies flattered you." "I was angry." "You were cruel. Anger is not a costume that makes cruelty acceptable." His voice broke. "I can fix this. I'll transfer the shares back, the house, half of everything, more." Eleanor looked at him for a long moment. "Charles, I already told you what your money means to me. I left it on the table." Stepped closer. "Come home." "No, I love you." The words arrived late, overdressed, and empty-handed. He dropped to one knee. Several people in the hallway saw. Eleanor did not tell them to look away. "You thought I married you for wealth," she said. "Now you're offering wealth to buy back the wife you never valued. Do you hear how cheap that sounds?" His face crumpled. She walked past him. Nathaniel opened the car door without touching her. Kindness without ownership. She could learn to live with that. The consequences settled in layers. Brooke lost her position within 24 hours. The company demanded repayment for unauthorized expenses. The defamation suit arrived. The investigation into the night of the accident found enough links through a shell contractor tied to Brooke's cousin to keep her in rooms where tears had no audience. By the end of the month, she was formally named in the investigation for reckless endangerment, defamation, and misuse of company funds. Charles lost the board's trust. The partnership moved forward without him in control. He remained wealthy. Men like Charles did not become poor because truth was inconvenient, but his name changed flavor. At meetings, people watched his judgment. Old friends stopped calling him brilliant and started calling him unfortunate. The mansion stayed large. The garden stayed empty. Brooke was gone. Eleanor was gone. His father was gone. Only the money remained. It comforted no one. Eleanor accepted Nathaniel's partnership offer the following month, not as charity, not as revenge, as work. He placed the contract on the table and waited while she read every page. "You left a wealthy man with nothing," he said. She signed one section, then looked up. "Not nothing. I left him consequences." "What do you want now?" "A life where no one mistakes my silence for permission." Nathaniel nodded. "That seems worth building." Never called her fragile. Never asked if she missed being Mrs. Whitmore. Never asked what Charles had given her. He asked what she wanted to build, where she wanted the foundation office, which projects mattered, and whether she preferred coffee before or after meetings. Small things, dangerous things. A woman could survive grand betrayals and still be undone by someone remembering how she took her coffee. She did not fall in love with him, not then. But she stopped flinching when kindness entered the room. Clara came with her to plant the lilies. Eleanor had chosen a small courtyard behind her new office near the water. It received morning sun and afternoon shade. No mansion walls. No husband ignoring the flowers from behind glass. No assistant eyeing the seat beside him. Just soil and quiet. Clara knelt beside her, carefully placing the bulbs into the earth. "They survived," Clara said. "Did I?" When the last bulb was covered, Eleanor pressed her palm flat over the soil. "The old garden, they were proof I was still trying," she said. "Here, they can just bloom." 1 year later, on the exact anniversary of the accident, Eleanor woke early. No hospital ceiling, no blood in her mouth, no nurse waiting for a husband who would never come. Rain tapped lightly against the windows. Her home smelled of coffee, and the lilies Clara had brought the day before in a simple glass vase. A news alert appeared on her phone. Vale and Whitmore Independent Committee launched new Lowcountry Foundation project under Eleanor Whitmore's direction. The photo showed her standing beside Nathaniel, Clara in the background holding a ribbon too seriously, and a row of white lilies blooming along the courtyard wall. Somewhere across the city, Charles stood in the old mansion garden in the rain. The lily bed was still empty. He stood there for nearly an hour. Brooke was gone. His father was gone. Eleanor was gone. Only the dark soil remembered where something living used to be. He tried her old number. It was blocked. That was his ending, not poverty, not prison. Something worse for a man like Charles Whitmore, irrelevance. Later that afternoon, Eleanor stood in her courtyard while the rain slowed to mist. Clara held an umbrella even though they were both mostly dry. Nathaniel arrived with 2 cups of coffee and stopped beside the lilies. He offered her one. She took it. "Do you miss any of it?" he asked. She looked at the flowers. "The lilies," she said. His gaze followed hers. "They came with you." She smiled, small and real. "Exactly. Charles once told a nurse to call him when she died, so she did him one better." She let the wife he never valued die on paper, took her name back in court, buried the worst of his empire under the truth, and planted her lilies where no one would ever again mistake them for grief. He thought she wanted his money. In the end, she left him with every dollar and took the only thing he could never afford, a life where his name no longer reached her.